The CEO received an alert on his phone at 3 in the morning and caught the cleaning lady saving $27 million. What are you doing? Andrew Novak's voice, 35 years old, echoed through the presidential suite at 3 in the morning. The cleaning lady did not flinch, not even a little. Anne, 29 years old, was barefoot, her blue uniform stained with colored chalk, a pink neon pen drawing formulas and flowcharts directly on the glass walls of the executive office. In the center of everything, the central computer pulsed in blue, lines of code rolling on their own like a digital waterfall. "Status?" she asked, without even looking at the screen. And the worst part, she was not asking Andrew, she was asking the computer. "Persistent access attempt," answered the metallic voice of the system. "Risk level, critical. 17 entry points compromised." Andrew felt his entire body freeze. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He looked at the screen with trembling hands. "Alert. Transfer in progress. Amount $20 million. $20 million. Disappearing. Now." While he stood there in plaid pajamas, a blazer thrown over them, and slippers that did not match because he had run out in the dark. "You hacked my system?" he shouted, his voice rising 2 octaves. Anne raised a finger in the air without turning around. "Do not speak loudly," she requested, drawing a new flowchart on the glass with a calmness that bordered on absurd. "It listens to patterns, not voices, but still. Better not to risk it." "It who?" "The intruder, Mr. Novak. The intruder." Anne touched the screen with 2 fingers as if she were petting a particularly temperamental cat. "Isolate the financial core," she commanded. "Mirror the data to the secondary server. Now." "Command accepted," said the computer. Andrew blinked, rubbed his eyes, blinked again. The cleaning lady was giving orders to his multi-million-dollar operating system, and the system was obeying. "Wait a moment," he said, raising his hands as if he could pause reality. "You are the cleaning lady." Anne finally turned around. She had honey-colored eyes, brown hair tied in a bun from which some rebellious strands escaped, and an expression that clearly said, "Yes, I know this seems crazy, but you are going to have to trust me." "And you are wearing pajamas with little duckies on them," she observed, pointing at his pants. "I think neither of us is exactly in our formal attire." Andrew looked down. It was true. Little yellow ducks swam happily on a navy blue background. A Christmas gift from his 3-year-old niece. "That is completely irrelevant." "Just like my cleaning uniform," Anne responded, and went back to writing on the glass. "Why are you barefoot?" he asked, because apparently his brain had decided to focus on the least important details of the situation. "I think better without shoes," Anne responded without taking her eyes off the formulas. "That does not make any sense. It does not need to make sense to you. It just needs to work." The computer emitted an alert sound. "Second attack layer detected. Intruder adapting code in real time." Anne made a sound with her tongue, a disapproving tsk, that reminded him of a teacher correcting a lazy student's homework. "Interesting," she murmured, tilting her head. "He is good." He thought 17 entry points would be enough. "Amateur. Last week I saw an attack with 43. "Last week?" Andrew choked. "This happens every week?" Anne ignored the question. She was too busy drawing a series of arrows and circles that looked like a subway map drawn by a hurried genius. "What are these symbols?" he asked, approaching the glass walls. "Do not touch." Anne placed herself in front of him, blocking the way. "Mr. Novak, I need you to do 3 very simple things. First, do not touch anything. Second, do not shout. Third, try to breathe normally so you do not faint." "Why would I faint?" His phone vibrated again. "Update. Transfer amount increased to $22 million. The room spun. The walls seemed to close in. Andrew felt his legs go weak. "That is why," Anne said with a sigh. "Sit on the couch before you fall on my flowchart." Andrew sat down. Not because she told him to, but because his legs had clearly decided to go on strike. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice coming out weak and confused. "Anne. Night shift cleaning lady. Nice to officially meet you, Mr. Novak." "That is not a real answer. It is the only one you are going to get for now." She turned her attention back to the screens, her fingers flying over the holographic keyboard, while her other hand continued drawing on the glass. Andrew had never seen anyone do 2 such complex things at the same time. "Why do you write on the glass?" he asked, genuinely curious. Anne paused for half a second. Because I need to see in order to think, she explained, without stopping her work. My brain works too fast for spoken words. If I do not write, I lose the connections. It is like trying to hold water with your hands. By writing, I build a map. Andrew observed the walls covered with formulas, arrows, numbers, and symbols. It was like looking inside someone's mind, an extraordinarily organized mind in the middle of chaos. Does the central computer have voice recognition authorized for cleaning ladies? He asked, noticing another anomaly. No, Anne responded. But the system and I have an agreement. An agreement? I do not tell anyone about the vulnerabilities I find while cleaning, and it lets me talk to it from time to time. Andrew opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That is completely against all security protocols. Mr. Novak. Anne turned around, and for the first time there was something beyond calmness in her eyes. There was intensity. Your security system has more holes than a slice of Swiss cheese. I found the first vulnerability on my third day of work, while emptying the trash can in the finance department. If I were a malicious person, you would have lost everything 6 months ago. The silence that followed was dense enough to cut with a knife. Why did you not say anything? Andrew asked, his voice almost a whisper. Because I am the cleaning lady. Anne shrugged. Who is going to believe the woman who empties the trash cans? Before Andrew could respond, the computer spoke again. Alert, intruder redirecting attack to the executive sector. Estimated time to total compromise, 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Anne took a deep breath and turned back to face the screens. Mr. Novak, she said, her voice firm. I need full access to the system. All levels, all permissions, all security layers. That is crazy. I do not know you. Correct. You do not know me. But I know your system better than anyone in this building, including your technology team, who, by the way, should be fired on Monday. She pointed to the screen where the numbers kept falling. In 4 minutes, if I do not have that access, you are going to know bankruptcy lawyers very well. And believe me, bankruptcy lawyers do not wear ducky pajamas. Andrew looked at Anne. At her bare feet, at her hands stained with neon ink, at the walls covered with formulas he could not understand, at the computer that blinked red, begging for help. $20 million, his entire company, his life. And a cleaning lady who talked to machines as if they were old friends. If you destroy my company, he said slowly, I will sue you until the end of time. Anne smiled, a small smile, almost imperceptible but genuine. If I destroy your company, Mr. Novak, you will not have the money to sue me. So I think we are both motivated to make this work. Andrew took a deep breath. Access granted. Anne nodded once and turned to the screens. System, she said, her voice clear and commanding. Recognize temporary emergency authorization. User Anne, access code Phoenix73. Authorization recognized. The computer responded. Welcome back, Anne. Andrew felt his jaw drop. Welcome back? Anne did not respond. She was already in motion, fingers flying, pen drawing precise lines on the glass. He did not know if he should call the police, call a psychiatrist, or simply sit and watch. With his hands still trembling, Andrew picked up his phone and dialed the technology director's number. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3 rings. Hello? The sleepy voice of Marcus Brennan answered from the other end of the line. Mr. Novak? It is 3 in the morning. Marcus, wake up now, Andrew ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. We are under attack. I want the entire IT team at the company in 30 minutes. Everyone. No exceptions. What? Attack? What kind of attack? The systems are showing everything normal here on my remote monitoring, and... Your remote monitoring is a joke, Andrew interrupted, looking at Anne, who continued working on the screens. 30 minutes, Marcus. If anyone complains, tell them their jobs depend on it. He hung up without waiting for a response. And then, with nothing else to do, Andrew Novak sat on the leather couch in his own presidential office, in ducky pajamas, at 3 in the morning, watching a barefoot cleaning lady save his company with a pink pen. He could not take his eyes off her. The elevator opened at 3:47 in the morning, and Marcus Brennan came running out as if the building were on fire. Technically, it was not. But what he saw through the glass walls of the presidential office made him wish it were. Because fire, at least, he would know how to put out. What is happening here? Marcus stopped in the hallway, eyes wide open. Behind him, 6 IT technicians crowded together, each with an expression that varied between extreme sleepiness, absolute confusion, and genuine terror. The scene on the other side of the glass looked like something out of a science fiction movie mixed with a corporate nightmare. The CEO of the company was sitting on a leather couch, wearing pajamas with a pattern of yellow duckies and a blazer thrown over them. The glass walls of the office were covered with formulas, arrows, circles, and numbers written in neon colors. The central computer blinked in shades of red and blue like a disco in panic. And right in the center of everything, a woman in a blue cleaning uniform, barefoot, drew flowcharts on the glass with a pink pen while conversing with the operating system. Secondary server under pressure, the metallic voice of the computer announced. 83% of critical capacity. Hold on a little longer, Anne responded, without taking her eyes off the glass. He has not taken the bait yet. Marcus felt his legs weaken. She is? She is talking to the system? Yes, Andrew responded from inside the office, his voice strangely calm. And the system is responding? Also. But Marcus could not form complete sentences. She is the cleaning lady. Anne slowly turned her head and stared at Marcus through the glass. And you are the IT director who did not notice the company was being invaded for 47 minutes, she said, her voice flat. I think neither of us is at our best professional moment. Marcus swallowed hard. Come in, Andrew ordered, getting up from the couch. Come in, but do not touch anything. The IT team entered the room in single file, as if they were entering a minefield. Each one chose a corner and stood still, not knowing what to do with their own hands. 85%. The computer updated. Anne drew another arrow on the glass, connecting two blocks of numbers that looked like coordinates from another planet. Andrew looked at his technology team, 6 highly qualified professionals, 3 with master's degrees, 1 with a doctorate, all frozen like wax statues. Do something, he exploded, pointing at the screens. You are the IT team. This is what I pay you for. Marcus exchanged glances with his colleagues. Nobody moved. Mr. Novak, Marcus said, his voice coming out small, we cannot do anything. What do you mean you cannot? She is already doing it. He pointed to Anne, who continued working as if the conversation did not exist. If we interfere now, we could ruin everything. We need to wait. Andrew ran his hand over his face. You are telling me that my entire IT team is going to stand there watching the cleaning lady save the company? Silence was the answer. 87%, the computer announced. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, sir, if we could at least follow what she is doing. He made a gesture to the other technicians. Each one pulled a laptop from their backpack and started opening them. In seconds, 6 screens were on, all connected to the central system. And then they saw. Anne's fingers danced on the holographic keyboard while her other hand drew on the glass. On the laptop screens, the technicians could see exactly what she was doing. Complex commands being executed at impossible speed, firewalls being reinforced, digital traps being activated. My God, one of the technicians whispered. She is using a protocol I have never seen before. This is a variation of the layered defense system, another murmured, eyes glued to the screen. But modified, heavily modified. Where did she get this from? Nobody had an answer. Marcus approached Anne, keeping a respectful distance. Excuse me, these commands you are using. Where did you learn them? Anne did not stop working. In college. What college teaches this? One you would not be able to get into. On the other side of the room, one of the technicians let out a nervous laugh. Marcus shot a withering look in his direction. 89%, the computer updated. Recommendation, sacrifice secondary server to preserve integrity of main core. Anne stopped writing. The entire room held its breath. Sacrifice? Andrew approached, his heart racing. What does that mean? It means shutting down the server temporarily, Anne explained, her eyes still fixed on the screen. Everything in it will seem like it disappeared, but actually it will be protected in a layer invisible to the intruder. How much money is in that server? Anne checked the numbers. Approximately $15 million. The air in the room seemed to be sucked out. 15 million, Marcus choked. You want to make $15 million disappear? I want to protect $15 million, Anne corrected. There is a difference. But what if it does not work? What if the money really disappears? Anne finally turned to face Marcus. Her honey-colored eyes were absolutely calm. "Mr. Brennan, I have two options. Option 1, I sacrifice the secondary server, hide the money, and hope the intruder falls for the trap. Option 2, I do nothing, and in 3 minutes you are all going to lose your jobs because the company is going to go bankrupt." The silence was deafening. "Choose," Anne said. Andrew looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at the team. The team looked at their own screens, where the numbers kept rising. 90%, 91. "Do it," Andrew said, his voice hoarse. "Do what you need to do." Anne nodded. "System. Authorization confirmed. Execute Shadow 9 protocol. Now." Shadow 9 protocol initiated, the computer responded. Secondary server entering ghost mode. On the laptop screens, the IT team watched in real time as the commands were executed. And then, before everyone's eyes, $15 million simply disappeared. The number that previously showed the server balance now displayed only zeros. "My God," one of the technicians whispered. "It is gone," another said, his voice trembling. "Everything is gone." Marcus turned white as paper. "Mr. Novak, the money, the money." "Silence," Anne ordered, without taking her eyes off the main screen. "It is not over yet." The computer emitted another alert. "Intruder detected anomaly. Redirecting attack to tertiary server." Anne smiled. "Perfect." He took the bait. She went back to work, the pink pen dancing on the glass while her fingers flew across the keyboard. The IT team followed every movement on their own screens, completely mesmerized. She is luring him into a trap," Marcus murmured, finally understanding. "She is making him think he is winning." 92% on the tertiary server, the computer announced. Anne did not move. 94%, she continued writing. 96%. One of the technicians groaned with anxiety. 98%. "Now," Anne said and touched the screen with 2 fingers. "Mirror the tertiary. Activate Phoenix protocol." Phoenix protocol activated. The computer responded. Mirroring complete. The screen blinked, and another $12 million disappeared. One of the technicians dropped his laptop on the floor. Another covered his mouth with his hands. A third simply sat on the floor as if his legs had given up working. $27 million, Marcus said, his voice high-pitched. $27 million are gone. It is over. The company is over. I am going to jail. I have children. I have a dog. The dog is not going to survive without me. Mr. Brennan, Anne said without turning around. If you do not stop talking, I am going to ask the system to block your access to the company coffee. Permanently. Marcus closed his mouth. Anne typed one last sequence of commands. System, deactivate ghost mode. Restore secondary and tertiary servers. Show the real balance. Command accepted. Restoring. The screen blinked one last time, and $27 million reappeared as if they had never left. The room exploded with exclamations. It is back! The money is back! How is this possible? The IT team frantically checked their own laptops, confirming the numbers once, twice, 3 times. Everything is here, one of them said, his voice choked. Every cent, everything is here. Marcus let himself fall onto the couch next to Andrew, his hands trembling. How did she do this? Anne put the pink pen in her uniform pocket and allowed herself a small sigh. The money never left, she explained, turning to face the group. I just hid it in a layer the intruder could not see. While he thought he was winning, I was moving everything to a safe place. But the zeros on the screen, an illusion, a digital smoke screen. She shrugged. He saw what I wanted him to see. Andrew slowly got up from the couch, his legs still shaky. And the intruder? What happened to him? Anne smiled, and there was something genuinely satisfied in that smile. While he was busy celebrating his fake victory, I was tracing the origin of the attack. Andrew's heart raced. Did you find out who it is? System, Anne said, turning to the screen. Show the origin location of the attack. The main screen changed. A map appeared. A red dot blinked right in the center. Andrew felt the air leave his lungs. The dot was not on the other side of the world. It was not in another country. It was not even in another city. The red dot blinked inside the Novak Technologies building itself. The intruder is here, Anne said, her voice serious. Someone inside is trying to destroy the company. Andrew looked at his IT team, and for the first time, he realized the enemy could be right in front of him. The first ray of sunlight came through the window and illuminated Andrew Novak's face like an accusatory spotlight. He was still in his ducky pajamas. The IT team was still in a state of shock. And the cleaning lady who had just saved $27 million was calmly putting the pink pen in her pocket as if nothing had happened. "All right," Andrew said, crossing his arms. "Now you're going to tell me everything." Anne raised an eyebrow. "Everything about what?" "About you. Who are you really? Where did you come from? Where did you learn all this?" Those are a lot of questions for a Tuesday morning. "Anne." "Mr. Novak." They stared at each other for a long moment. From the corner of the room, Marcus Brennan timidly raised his hand. "Can I go to the bathroom?" "No," Andrew responded without taking his eyes off Anne. "But I have been here for 4 hours and my bladder cannot take it anymore." "The bladder is going to have to wait, Marcus." "With all due respect, sir, the bladder does not respect corporate hierarchy." One of the technicians let out a muffled laugh. Andrew shot a look that could freeze hot coffee. 5 minutes, he said through his teeth. 5 minutes and you come back." Marcus practically ran to the door. Andrew turned his attention back to Anne. "Where were we? You were interrogating me and I was thinking about how ironic the situation is." "Ironic? Why?" "Because you are in ducky pajamas trying to look intimidating." Anne smiled. "It is not working." Andrew looked down. The yellow duckies seemed to be laughing at him. "Ignore the pajamas. Hard to ignore 20 duckies staring at me." "Anne, focus. Who are you?" She sighed and walked to the glass wall covered with formulas. She ran her fingers over the drawings as if she were saying goodbye to old friends. "I am Anne, night shift cleaning lady. You already know that." "That is not an answer. It is the only one I have to give right now. You saved my company. You talk to computers. You know things my entire IT team does not know, and you want me to believe you are just a cleaning lady?" Anne turned to face him. "Mr. Novak, everyone is just something until someone looks closer." She shrugged. "You never looked at the cleaning lady before. Now you are looking. The difference is not me. It is you." Andrew was silent for a moment. That had hurt, mainly because it was true. "Okay," he said, changing strategy. "If you do not want to talk about yourself, talk about the traitor. What do we do now?" "Nothing. Nothing. Nothing for now." Anne crossed her arms. "The intruder does not know we found out. He thinks the attack failed because of a technical glitch, not because of a nosy cleaning lady. If we act now, he disappears, and we never find out who it is. So we wait, we observe." Anne corrected. "People who feel safe make mistakes, and when he makes his mistake, I will be there to see it." Trevor, one of the technicians, whispered to his colleague, "She is like a spy, a mop spy." "I heard that," Anne said without turning around. Trevor swallowed hard. "Sorry." Anne looked at the clock on the wall, 6:23 in the morning. "Mr. Novak, my shift ended more than 3 hours ago." Andrew blinked, confused. "So what?" "So I need to go home." "Go home?" His voice went up an octave. "There is a traitor loose in my company. You are the only person who can help and you want to go home?" "I do." "Why?" Anne walked to the corner of the room where she had left her shoes. They were simple sneakers, a little worn but well cared for. She bent down and started putting them on with all the calm in the world. "Because I have a life outside this building, Mr. Novak. I know this might be a new concept for you, but some people do. I have a life outside this building." "Really?" She tied the first sneaker. "When was the last time you left here before 10 at night?" Andrew opened his mouth to respond, closed it, opened it again. "That is irrelevant." "Uh-huh." Marcus came back from the bathroom with a relieved expression. "Did I miss anything?" Mr. Novak, discovering he has no personal life, Trevor informed him. "Oh, we already knew that." "Marcus," Andrew growled. "Sorry, sir, it slipped out." Anne finished tying the second sneaker and stood up. She took the pink pen out of her pocket and stared at it for a moment. Andrew observed the scene. There was something in the way she held that pen, an affection that seemed out of place for such a simple object. As if the pen were more than just a pen. "That pen," he said. "Is it special?" Anne put the pen back in her uniform pocket. "Everything that matters is special, Mr. Novak." That is not an answer. "Are you starting to notice a pattern in my answers?" She walked to the door. Andrew took a step forward. "Wait, you said there is someone waiting for you at home?" Anne stopped with her hand on the doorknob. "I did." "So?" She turned around and smiled, a small, mysterious smile that revealed nothing. "That, Mr. Novak, is definitely none of your business. But Good night? Or good morning, whichever you prefer. When are you coming back? Tomorrow night. 10 o'clock. My shift starts at 10. Your cleaning shift? Anne opened the door. My shift of observing traders while pretending to clean bathrooms. She winked. Also known as the cleaning shift. And she left. The door closed with a soft click. The room fell silent. Marcus scratched his head. So, are we going to pretend all of this was normal? Nobody answered. Andrew was looking at the door through which Anne had disappeared. A mysterious cleaning lady. A pink pen that meant something. Someone waiting at home. Who was Anne really? That same day, the HR department at Novak Technologies called Anne. The voice on the other end said she was officially off that night and should report to the conference room the next day at 9 in the morning. Report for what? She asked. Orders from Mr. Novak. The voice paused. And Miss Anne, he asked me to let you know to wear corporate attire. You can stop by here first to pick up your blazer. My blazer? Apparently Mr. Novak already arranged one. Do not ask me how he knows the size. Anne hung up the phone and stared at the wall for a long moment. From the living room couch, her mother looked up from the book she was reading. Who was that, dear? My boss. Or former boss. Or new boss. I honestly do not know anymore. Is that good or bad? Anne thought for a moment. I have not decided yet. The next day, at 8:57 in the morning, Anne entered the elevator at Novak Technologies wearing simple dress pants, a discreet blouse, and the blazer that HR had delivered. It fit perfectly. This was slightly disturbing. The pink pen, as always, was in her pocket. When the elevator doors opened on the 32nd floor, Andrew Novak was waiting. He had dark circles so deep they looked like they had been dug with an ice cream scoop. You came. You had HR summon me. I thought it would be rude to ignore. It was not a summons. It was an invitation. Invitations usually come with the option to decline. Details. Anne looked at her own blazer. How did you know the size? Andrew looked away. A guess, too accurate of a guess. I am good at guessing. You asked HR to check my employee file, did you not? Next subject. Anne decided to let it go. For now. Andrew guided her down the hallway to the conference room. Along the way, employees cast curious glances at Anne. She pretended not to notice. Did you sleep? She asked. Of course I slept. Lie. How do you know? Because your shirt is buttoned wrong. Andrew looked down. It was true. The third button was in the fourth hole. That does not prove anything. It proves you got dressed in the dark, probably at 5 in the morning. After spending the whole night staring at the ceiling, Andrew stopped walking. Are you always like this? Like what? Annoyingly right. It is not my fault if you are predictably transparent. Before Andrew could respond, they arrived at the conference room. Marcus Brennan was already inside, organizing folders on the table. Good morning, Mr. Novak. He saw Anne and waved. Good morning, Miss Mop Spy. Is that nickname going to stick? Anne asked. Trevor already ordered t-shirts made. Of course he did. Andrew cleared his throat. Marcus, are the directors arriving? Yes, sir. Most of them are already on the floor. Marcus hesitated. Are you sure about this? About what? About introducing her as a consultant. He lowered his voice. Some directors might find it strange. They are going to have to deal with it. The directors began entering the room in the following minutes. Andrew stood up and cleared his throat. Gentlemen, before we begin, I would like to introduce someone. This is Anne. She will be working with us as a temporary security consultant. A bald man with gold-rimmed glasses frowned. Security consultant? I have never heard of her. She is new, Andrew said. New from where? From outside. Outside where? Anne took a step forward. Outside of where you can see, apparently. The bald man opened his mouth and closed it without finding an answer. Marcus pretended to have a coughing fit to hide his laughter. At that moment, the door opened, and Raymond Cross walked in. He was 62 years old, with perfectly combed gray hair, an impeccable navy blue suit, and a smile that could convince anyone to buy a boat in the middle of the desert. Andrew. Raymond opened his arms and walked up to him. My boy, how are you? He hugged Andrew with the affection of a favorite uncle. I heard we had a complicated night. Technical problems, right? I came as soon as I could to help. Thank you, Raymond. Everything is under control now. Good, good. Raymond patted his shoulder. If you need anything at all, just say the word. You know you can count on me. Andrew smiled. I know. Raymond's eyes scanned the room until they found Anne. "And who is this young lady?" "Anne, our new security consultant." Raymond walked up to her with an even wider smile. "Anne, pleasure to meet you." He extended his hand. "Raymond Cross, partner of the company for more than 20 years. Anne shook his hand. "Pleasure. Welcome to the team." Raymond tilted his head with gentle curiosity. "Where do you come from, Anne?" "From many places." "Ah, a mysterious woman. I love mysteries." He laughed, a warm and contagious laugh. "Andrew has always had a good eye for talent. I am sure you are going to be a great addition to the team." "Thank you, Mr. Cross. Please call me Raymond. Mr. Cross makes me feel old." He gave another smile, waved to the group, and went to sit in his chair at the head of the table. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. Raymond participated actively. He asked pertinent questions, he offered useful suggestions, he laughed at everyone's jokes, even the ones that were not funny. When the meeting ended, he was the first to say goodbye, shaking each person's hand and wishing them an excellent day. The room finally emptied. Andrew threw himself in the chair and sighed. "So what did you think?" Anne was standing near the window, looking at the city. "Think of what?" "Of the meeting, of the directors, of everything." Anne took a small notepad from her pocket and wrote something down. Andrew leaned forward. "What are you writing?" "Observations. About people." "Which people?" Anne put the notepad away without answering. Andrew stood up and walked over to her. "Anne, talk to me." "What did you see?" She was silent for a moment. "Mr. Cross," she said finally. "How long has he been a partner?" "Raymond? More than 20 years. He owned a technology company that my father bought a long time ago. Since then, he has been part of the board." "And has he always been like this?" "Like what?" "Friendly, smiling, helpful." Andrew frowned. "Yes, Raymond is one of the most trustworthy people I know. He helped me a lot after my father retired." "Why?" Anne did not answer immediately. "Mr. Novak," she said quietly, "people who are too friendly make me curious." Andrew let out a laugh. "Are you suspicious of Raymond? The man who sent flowers to my secretary when her cat got sick? He sent flowers to the cat?" "To the secretary because of the cat." "That is very friendly." "Exactly. That is Raymond." Anne turned to face him. She was not laughing. "Mr. Novak, perfect smiles usually hide something." Andrew opened his mouth to disagree, but something in her expression made him stop. "You are serious." "I am always serious." Anne took the pink pen from her pocket and twirled it between her fingers. "You have known his smile for decades. That does not mean you know him." Andrew fell silent. And somewhere in that building, someone with high-level credentials was waiting for the right moment to attack again. The badge said Anne, Security Consultant. Anne looked at it for a long moment, trying to decide if this was a promotion or a sentence. Probably both. Over the next 3 days, she became a kind of corporate ghost. She appeared in the most unexpected places, always with a notepad in hand and the pink pen in her pocket. She observed, she wrote, and she made everyone slightly uncomfortable. It was a talent, actually. In the cafeteria, she sat alone in a strategic corner, close enough to the executives' tables to hear conversations, far enough to seem distracted. She discovered that Dennis Harlow, the bald man with the gold glasses, complained about the coffee at least 4 times a day. That the finance director, a woman named Patricia Webb, had a not-so-secret affair with someone from the legal department, and that absolutely nobody liked Monday meetings. Useful information? Not all of it. Interesting? All of it. That afternoon, Anne was in the hallway of the 32nd floor pretending to examine a fire extinguisher when Andrew appeared. "What are you doing?" "Checking fire safety." "You are a digital security consultant, not fire." "Security is security, Mr. Novak." Andrew looked at the fire extinguisher, looked at Anne, looked at the fire extinguisher again. "You are spying on someone." "I am observing." "What is the difference?" "Spying is illegal. Observing is professional." Before Andrew could respond, the door to the office next door opened, and Raymond Cross came out. "Andrew! Anne!" He smiled as if he had just won the lottery. "What a wonderful coincidence to find you two here." "Hi, Raymond," Andrew said. "Mr. Cross," Anne greeted. "Raymond?" "Please," he winked. "I already told you that Mr. makes me feel old." He looked at the fire extinguisher and frowned slightly. "Problems with safety equipment?" "Just a routine check," Anne responded. "Ah, such dedication. That is why I love having new people on the team. new energy, new ideas. Raymond patted Andrew on the shoulder. "You chose well, my boy," and he walked down the hallway, whistling a cheerful melody. Anne kept watching until he disappeared around the corner. "He whistles," she said. "So what? Who whistles in a corporate hallway?" "Happy people. People who want to seem happy." Andrew sighed. "Anne, you cannot be suspicious of everyone who smiles." "I am not suspicious of everyone who smiles, only of those who smile too much." That night, Andrew found Anne in the office that had been assigned to her, a small office on the 28th floor, with glass walls that she had already started filling with notes. He entered without knocking. "We need to talk. Good evening to you too." "Anne, it has been almost a week." He closed the door behind him. "I think we should call the FBI." Anne stopped writing. "No." "What do you mean no?" "No, Mr. Novak, not yet. There is a traitor in my company. Someone tried to steal $27 million. That is a federal crime, I know. Then why can we not call the authorities?" Anne turned to face him. "Because if we scare him now, he disappears, erases his tracks, hires a lawyer. And in 6 months, when everyone has forgotten, he comes back and tries again." She crossed her arms. "Do you want to arrest him or do you want to get rid of him forever?" Andrew fell silent. "I need more time," Anne continued. "I need concrete evidence, something that not even the best lawyer in the country can contest." "How much time?" "A few days, maybe a week." Andrew ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "And what do I do in the meantime?" "You pretend everything is normal. So, smile at meetings, shake hands, act like nothing happened. That is too cruel. That is strategy." Andrew stared at her for a long moment, then he sighed. "Okay, 1 week, but if by then you have nothing, if by then I have nothing, you can call the FBI, the CIA, and the Avengers if you want. The Avengers are fiction. You understood." The next day, something unexpected happened. Andrew invited Anne to lunch. It was not a formal invitation. He simply appeared at the door of her office at noon and said, "Do you eat?" "Occasionally." "Cafeteria, now." Was that an invitation or an order? It was an emphatic suggestion. Anne put the pen in her pocket and followed him. The cafeteria was full. Employees from all departments crowded the tables, balancing trays and conversations. Andrew chose a table in the corner, far enough for privacy, close enough to seem normal. "So," he said, poking at his salad with his fork, "I realized I know almost nothing about you. You know I write on walls and talk to computers. Is that not enough?" "No." He took a sip of water. "Do you have family?" Anne stopped chewing for half a second. "Why?" "Curiosity. You know everything about me. My company, my ducky pajamas, my wrongly buttoned buttons. I know nothing about you." Anne was silent for a moment. "I have who matters," she said finally. "That is not an answer. It is the answer I have to give." Andrew observed her. There was something in her eyes, a shadow, an old pain that she hid very well. "Will you tell me one day?" he asked quietly. Anne met his gaze. "One day, maybe." The moment was interrupted by a disaster in the form of a tray. Trevor, the IT technician who had bet that Anne was a collective dream, tripped over absolutely nothing and dropped an entire tray of spaghetti right on the table next to them, which happened to be where Dennis Harlow was sitting. The red sauce flew in slow motion. Dennis screamed. Trevor panicked. And Anne, for the first time since Andrew had known her, started to laugh. It was not a polite laugh. It was a real belly laugh, the kind that makes your eyes water and your stomach hurt. Andrew was mesmerized. She looked completely different when she laughed. "That," Anne said, wiping her eyes, "was the best thing I have seen all week." "Poor Trevor," Andrew said, but he was also smiling. "Poor Dennis. That suit looked expensive. It was expensive. Well, now it is a suit with personality." That night, Anne stayed in the office until late. The glass walls were covered with notes, arrows, and connections. She had mapped the schedules of all the directors, their meetings, their external appointments, their trips, and then she saw it. A pattern. The 3 attacks on the system, including the big one from the first night, had happened at very specific times. Anne crossed those times with the directors' schedules. One name repeated. Every time the system was attacked, Raymond Cross was in an external meeting, outside the building, with a perfect alibi. Coincidence? Anne looked at his name circled in red on the glass. She did not believe in coincidences. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Andrew. "I need to talk to you. Tomorrow morning, I found something." On the other side of the city, Andrew read the message and felt his stomach sink. Something told him the answer was not going to be easy to swallow. Andrew appeared at the door of Anne's office at 7:12 in the morning. He had not slept well. Her message, "I found something," kept hammering in his head all night like a particularly annoying mosquito. "You said you found something," he said, entering without knocking. "What is it?" Anne was standing in front of the glass wall, the pink pen in her hand, deep dark circles under her eyes. "Good morning to you too." "Anne?" "Mr. Novak, it is 7 in the morning. I crossed the city without having coffee. Tell me what you discovered before I have a nervous breakdown." Anne pointed to the wall. There was a schedule chart, colored lines connecting dates and events, and right in the center, circled in red, the name Raymond Cross. "The attacks," she said. "All 3 of them. They happened at very specific times." Andrew approached, frowning. "So what?" "So I crossed those times with the schedules of all the directors." Anne traced a line with her finger. Every time the system was attacked, Raymond Cross was in an external meeting, outside the building, with witnesses. Andrew was silent for a moment, then he shook his head. "Wait, that does not make sense." "Why not?" "Because you yourself said the attack came from inside the building. The map showed the red dot right here." He pointed at the floor. "If Raymond was outside, how can he be responsible?" Anne smiled. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for exactly that question. "He does not need to be here physically." Andrew frowned. "What do you mean?" "Mr. Novak, do you think a man like Raymond Cross would dirty his own hands?" Anne walked to another section of the wall where there was a detailed timeline. "He programmed the attack. Everything automatic. That is why the times are so specific. He schedules the invasion for when he is away with a perfect alibi, and the system executes on its own." Andrew processed the information slowly. "So the attack comes from inside the building, because the malicious code is already here, planted, waiting for the right moment to act. And Raymond is having coffee with investors while his program does the dirty work." Anne crossed her arms. "Elegant, is it not?" Andrew did not seem to find it elegant. He seemed to find it nauseating. "This could be a coincidence," he said, but his voice no longer had as much conviction. 3 times? Coincidences happen 3 times. "Mr. Novak, you are in denial." "I am not in denial. I am being rational. You are protecting someone who might be trying to destroy your company." Andrew turned to face her. "Raymond is practically family. He taught me half of what I know about business. He sent flowers when my dog got sick." "You also have a dog?" "Had. Bingo. Poodle." Andrew shook his head. "That is beside the point. The point is that Raymond would not do this." Anne crossed her arms. "Are you absolutely certain?" Andrew opened his mouth to respond, closed it, opened it again. 90% certain. "And the other 10%? "The other 10% is the reason I am here at 7 in the morning without having had coffee." Anne almost smiled. "I still need more proof," she said, looking back at the wall. "The pattern is suspicious, but it is not enough to accuse someone like Raymond Cross. I need to find the code he planted in the system. If I can trace it to the source." "Can you do that?" "I can try." "How long?" Anne hesitated. "A few days." 3 days later, her body almost gave up. Anne had been in front of the computer for 18 straight hours. The glass walls were covered with notes, more than before, layers upon layers of codes, numbers, and connections. Her eyes burned. Her hands trembled slightly over the keyboard. She was close, so close. The malicious code was almost located. A few more hours and she would have the definitive proof. That was when she made the mistake. A wrong click, a command in the wrong place. The system emitted a shrill alarm. "No, no, no, no," Anne murmured, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Cancel, cancel, cancel. Security alarm activated," the metallic voice of the computer announced. "Notifying IT team." "Do not notify anyone," Anne practically screamed. "Cancel the alarm. Emergency code Phoenix 73. Code accepted. Alarm cancelled." The silence that followed was deafening. Anne let herself fall into the chair, her heart racing, her hands trembling more than before. She had almost ruined everything. By one click, a single wrong click. That was how Andrew found her. He had heard the alarm from the other side of the floor and came running. When he opened the door to the office, he found Anne curled up in the chair, eyes closed, breathing with difficulty. "Anne?" He approached slowly. What happened? Nothing. I heard an alarm. False alarm. I already took care of it. Andrew looked at her. Really looked. The dark circles were deeper than ever. Her hair was tied in a messy bun that looked like it had not been redone in days, and her hands would not stop trembling. Anne, he said quietly, when was the last time you slept? I slept. When? Recently. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have. Andrew pulled up a chair and sat in front of her. When was the last time you ate? Anne opened her mouth to respond. Closed it. Frowned. I ate. When? Today. What did you eat? She stopped. Does coffee count as food? No. Then I do not know. Andrew stood up. Get your things. What? Your things. Purse, pink pen, whatever you need. I am taking you home. Anne's eyes widened. Mr. Novak, I cannot leave now. I am in the middle of... You are in the middle of a breakdown. Andrew pointed at her hands, which were still trembling. You are not going to solve anything in this state. Tomorrow you come back and finish. But the notes, Anne looked at the glass walls covered with information. Days of work, connections, evidence, all there, exposed. If someone comes in here, if someone sees this, nobody is going to see it. How can you guarantee that? Andrew took his phone out of his pocket and dialed a number. Roberto, this is Novak. I need 2 security agents on the 28th floor, Consultant Anne's office. Now. He paused. No, it is not optional. They are going to stay at the door all night. Nobody enters. Nobody leaves. Nobody even looks at this office. Understood? He hung up. Anne was looking at him with a strange expression. What is it? Andrew asked. You just put 2 guards to watch my notes. I did. Why? Because you asked. I did not ask. I just said I was worried. Same thing. Anne did not know what to say. 15 minutes later, 2 security agents were positioned at the door of the office. Andrew locked the door personally, put the key in his pocket, and guided Anne to the elevator. His car was in the underground parking lot. A luxury sports model, shiny black, with elegant lines that looked like they'd been designed by the wind. Anne stopped. What is it? Andrew asked. Nothing. It is just that this car suits you. Is that a compliment? It is an observation. Andrew walked to the passenger door and opened it for her. Madam, Anne raised an eyebrow. Is that necessary? My mother taught me to be a gentleman. If I do not open the door, she appears in my dreams to scold me. Anne let out a weak laugh and got in the car. Andrew went around and took the wheel. He turned on the sound system. A country song started playing. Anne made a face. You are not serious. This is a classic. This is an offense to my ears. Andrew laughed and changed the station. The drive to Anne's house took about 30 minutes. She lived in a quiet neighborhood, in a small house with a well-kept garden in the front. When the car stopped, Anne saw a figure on the porch, her mother. Waiting. Andrew looked at the porch, then at Anne. You live with your mother? Anne turned to him. Why? What is the problem? No, there is no problem at all. It is just that. He scratched the back of his neck. You said you had an important person waiting for you at home. I thought it was, I do not know, a husband? Anne let out a laugh. Well, it is my mother. She is the most important person in my life. She opened the car door. I do not have a husband, Mr. Novak, or a boyfriend. Andrew tried to hide the relief on his face. It did not work. Does she always wait at the door? He asked, quickly changing the subject. Only when I take too long. Anne sighed. Which means always. Andrew got out of the car, went around, and opened the door for Anne. Again? She asked. My mother is watching me from beyond. I cannot disappoint her. They walked to the porch. Anne's mother was a woman in her early 60s, gray hair tied in an elegant bun and honey-colored eyes identical to her daughter's. She was wearing a floral robe and an expression of worry that had probably been etched on her face for days. Anne, she came down the porch steps. Are you okay? I called 3 times and you did not answer. I was working, Mom. Working? You look like you have not slept in a week. It was only 3 days. 3 days? Andrew cleared his throat. Anne's mother seemed to notice him for the first time. And who are you? Andrew Novak, ma'am. I am... He hesitated. Your daughter's boss. More or less. More or less. It is complicated. The mother looked at Anne, looked at Andrew, looked at Anne again. He is handsome, she said without any subtlety. Mom. What? I am just observing. Anne felt her face heat up. Mr. Novak, this is my mother, Helena. Nice to meet you, Miss Helena. The pleasure is mine. Helena shook his hand and did not let go. So you were the one responsible for keeping my daughter awake for 3 days straight? Mom, he did not. Actually, Andrew interrupted, I am the one responsible for bringing her home to rest. The part about staying awake for 3 days was her decision. Helena let go of his hand and smiled. I like him, she said to Anne. He is honest. Mom, please, and polite and handsome. Did I mention he is handsome? Twice. Well, 3 times will not hurt. He is handsome. Andrew was clearly trying not to laugh. Thank you, Miss Helena. Call me Helena. Miss makes me feel old. Anne groaned. I am going inside now. Good night, Mr. Novak. She started up the steps, but Andrew's voice made her stop. Anne? She turned around. He was standing next to the car, hands in his pockets, the porch light illuminating his face. Really, rest. Tomorrow we finish this together. Anne swallowed hard. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything. You do not need to thank me. Yes, I do. They stood looking at each other for a moment. Helena watched the scene with a smile Anne knew all too well. Good night, Mr. Novak, Anne said finally. Good night, Anne. He got in the car and drove away. Anne kept watching until the taillights disappeared around the corner. So, Helena said, crossing her arms, when are you going to tell me the whole story? There is no story. Dear, I raised you. I know when there is a story. Anne went up the steps and passed by her mother. Good night, Mom. He likes you. Anne stopped at the door. He is my boss. He brought you home, put security guards to protect your work, and kept looking at you like you were the most interesting thing in the world. Helena smiled. That is not boss behavior. Anne did not respond. She went inside, went to her room, and threw herself on the bed. But sleep did not come easy. Because every time she closed her eyes, she saw Andrew's face. And that was much more dangerous than any malicious code. Anne finally managed to sleep 9 straight hours. When she woke up, her mother was at the bedroom door with a cup of coffee and a smile that promised nothing good. So, Helena said, did the handsome man call yet? Mom, it is 7 in the morning. So what? Handsome men do not call in the morning? He is my boss. You already said that. It did not convince me yesterday. It is not going to convince me today. Anne took the coffee and closed the door in her mother's face. On the other side, Helena laughed. 2 hours later, Anne was back at Novak Technologies. The 2 security agents were still at the door of her office. One of them looked like he had not slept all night. The other was eating a sandwich. Good morning, Anne said. Good morning, miss, the sandwich agent responded. Mr. Novak asked me to let you know there is a meeting at 10. He wants you to attend. Meeting about what? About the attack. With all the directors. Anne felt her stomach sink. All the directors, including Raymond Cross. At 9:55, Anne entered the conference room. She had spent the last hour reviewing her notes, organizing the data, and preparing a presentation that did not accuse anyone directly, but made it clear there was a suspicious pattern. It was a delicate balance. She needed to show she knew something without revealing she knew everything. The room was full. 7 directors seated around the mahogany table. Marcus Brennan in a corner, trying to look invisible. And Andrew at the head, with a serious expression Anne had never seen before. Raymond Cross was seated to Andrew's right, smiling, as always. Anne, Andrew said, gesturing for her to approach. You can start whenever you are ready. Anne took a deep breath and walked to the presentation screen. Gentlemen, she said, over the past few days I analyzed the patterns of the attacks on the company's system. What I found was interesting. She clicked the remote control. A chart appeared on the screen. The 3 attacks happened at very specific times. They were not random, they were programmed. Dennis Harlow, the bald man with the gold glasses, leaned forward. Programmed by whom? I am still investigating. But the malicious code was planted inside the system. The intruder is not attacking from outside, they are attacking from inside. Murmurs went through the room. Raymond Cross continued smiling. Impassive. This means, Anne continued, that someone with privileged access to the system is responsible. Someone in this room? Another director asked. Not necessarily, but someone with high-level credentials. The silence that followed was heavy. Dennis Harlow cleared his throat. With all due respect, miss, Anne already knew what was coming. You were cleaning bathrooms last week. Some muffled laughs went through the room. Anne felt her face heat up but kept her expression neutral. And now you are here, Dennis continued, adjusting his gold glasses. Accusing people with decades of experience of being criminals? Based on what? Some colorful charts? More laughs. Anne opened her mouth to respond, but she did not need to. Enough. Andrew's voice cut through the room like lightning. Everyone fell silent. Andrew stood up from his chair. Slowly, deliberately. "Mr. Harlow," he said, his voice dangerously calm, "Miss Anne does not need to justify herself to anyone in this room." Dennis turned pale. "Mr. Novak, you were being rude, and I do not tolerate rudeness in my company." The silence now was absolute. Andrew walked until he was standing next to Anne. "This woman," he said, pointing at her, "saved $27 million while all of you were sleeping. She spent days without eating and without sleeping to protect this company. And she did it without asking for anything in return." He looked around the room, staring at each director. If anyone here should justify themselves, it is not her. His eyes stopped on Dennis. "It is those who did nothing while the system was being invaded." Dennis swallowed hard. I apologize." "Do not apologize to me. Apologize to her." Dennis turned to Anne, his face red. "I am sorry, Miss Anne." Anne nodded once without saying anything. On the other side of the table, Raymond Cross watched the scene with a slight smile on his lips, a smile that did not reach his eyes. Calculating, cold, Anne noticed, and filed that information away for later. "The meeting is adjourned," Andrew said. "Miss Anne, please continue your investigation. Anything you need, just ask." The directors began to stand up and leave, murmuring among themselves. Raymond was the last to go. He stopped at the door and looked at Anne. "Nice work, miss," he said, the smile still on his face. "I am looking forward to seeing your final conclusions." And he left. Anne stood looking at the closed door for a moment. "Are you okay?" Andrew's voice pulled her out of her trance. She turned around. He was standing beside her, his expression worried. "I am sorry about Dennis. He is an unpleasant fellow. I was going to use another word, but that one works." Anne let out a weak laugh. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for what you did. I did not do anything. You defended me, in front of everyone." Andrew shrugged. "I told the truth. You saved the company. You deserve respect." Anne stared at him for a long moment. There was something in his eyes, something she could not completely decipher. "Nobody has ever defended me like that before," she said, her voice almost a whisper. Andrew held her gaze. "Then the people around you were wrong." The air between them became dense, charged. Marcus cleared his throat from the corner of the room. "I am still here, in case you forgot." Anne looked away, her face hot. Andrew ran his hand through his hair. "Marcus, do you not have work to do?" "I do, but this is more interesting." "Out, Marcus. I am going. Marcus left, closing the door behind him. Anne and Andrew were left alone. "I should get back to work," she said. "You should. The evidence is not going to find itself." "It is not." Neither of them moved. "Anne," Andrew said quietly, "when all of this is over." He did not finish the sentence, but Anne understood, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something she thought she had forgotten. Hope. The Novak Technologies building was empty. Dark hallways, deserted offices. The only sound was the low hum of computers and the occasional click of Anne's keyboard. She had been sitting in front of the screen for hours, her eyes fixed on the lines of code dancing in front of her. The glass walls around her were completely covered with notes, arrows, numbers, connections. It looked like the mind of a genius exploded in pink ink. Anne did not even notice when the door opened. "You know there are more comfortable chairs in the world, right?" She turned around. Andrew was standing at the door, holding 2 cups of coffee. "What are you doing here?" Anne asked. "I work here." "It is almost 11 at night. And you are here." "I have a reason." "So do I." He entered the room and placed one of the cups on her desk. "My reason is this coffee, and maybe checking if you're still alive." Anne looked at the cup. "You brought coffee for me?" "No, I brought 2 coffees for myself and decided to share one with you out of the pure goodness of my heart." Was that sarcasm? That was the truth disguised as sarcasm. Anne picked up the cup and took a sip. It was hot and strong, exactly what she needed. "Thank you," she said. "You are welcome." Andrew walked around the room, observing the walls covered with notes. His eyes traveled over the formulas, the charts, the connections Anne had spent days building. "All of this came out of your head?" he asked, more or less. "Part of it came from the system. Part of it came from insomnia." Part of it came from desperation. Sounds like a healthy combination. It is what keeps me functioning. Andrew stopped in front of a particularly dense section of notes. You know, he said, without turning around, I spent my life surrounded by loud geniuses. Anne raised an eyebrow. Loud geniuses? Yes, that type of person who makes a point of showing how much they know, who walks into a room and needs everyone to notice how smart they are. He turned to face her. You are the first person who changes everything without raising your voice. Anne did not know what to say. I do not. She stopped, swallowed hard. Nobody usually looks at the person who cleans the edges. The edges? Yes, the margins, the corners, the places where nobody pays attention. She shrugged. That is where I have always been. Andrew approached. 1 step. 2. He stopped less than a meter from her. I am looking now, he said quietly. The air in the room became heavy. Anne felt her face heat up. She looked away toward the computer screen. Mr. Novak. Andrew. My name. It is Andrew. You can use it. Anne opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. That would be inappropriate. Why? Because you are my boss. Technically, you are an independent consultant. You are using my own argument against me. I am. Did it work? Anne let out a nervous laugh. No. Andrew smiled. That is okay. I am patient. He sat in the chair next to her, breaking the tension of the moment. Anne silently thanked him. So, he said, taking a sip of coffee, how is the progress? Anne took a deep breath, returning to professional mode. I am close. Very close. She pointed at the screen. The malicious code was hidden in layers. Whoever planted this knew what they were doing. But every code leaves traces. She clicked a few keys. I spent the last 3 days peeling those layers one by one. And what did you find? A digital signature, masked but not invisible. Anne leaned forward. When I break that mask, I will know exactly who created the code and who programmed the attacks. Andrew was silent for a moment. How long? Maybe a few hours, maybe less. And do you need anything? Anne looked at him. You already brought coffee. I can bring more. 2 coffees is already excessive for one night. 3 would be what? A cardiac problem. Andrew laughed. Fair. They sat in silence for a moment. A comfortable silence. The kind of silence that exists between people who do not need to fill every second with words. Anne, Andrew said quietly, regardless of what you find, I will wait as long as it takes. Anne turned to face him. There was something in his eyes, something that went beyond the case, beyond the company, beyond anything professional. She understood, and he knew she had understood. Anne started. The computer made a sound, a loud beep. Anne turned to the screen, her heart racing. What was that? Andrew asked. Anne did not respond. Her fingers were already flying across the keyboard. Anne? Wait. Lines of code began appearing on the screen, fast, intense. The mask was falling. Come on, Anne murmured. Come on, come on, come on. Another beep, and then the screen changed. A name appeared. Anne stopped breathing. What is it? Andrew stood up. Anne, what did you find? She did not respond. She just kept staring at the screen. The name blinked in green letters on a black background. Raymond Cross. And right below, the creation date of the malicious code. The access credentials used. The times programmed for each attack. Everything. Absolutely everything. Anne, Andrew repeated, his voice tense. Tell me what is happening. Anne turned to face him. I found it, she said. The evidence, everything. It is all here. Evidence of what? Of whom? Anne took a deep breath. Raymond Cross. Andrew's face turned pale. No, he said. It cannot be. It is all here, Mr. Novak. The code was created using his credentials. The attacks were programmed to coincide with his external meetings. The digital signature is his. Andrew ran his hand through his hair, stumbling backward. Raymond, he was my father's friend. I know. He taught me half of what I know. I know. Why? Why would he do this? Anne looked at the screen again. That, she said quietly, is what we are going to find out. Andrew was silent for a long moment. Then he raised his head. Call a meeting, he said, his voice firm despite everything. Tomorrow. All directors, including Raymond. Anne nodded. And Anne? Yes. Andrew stared at her with a determination she had never seen. Tomorrow we end this. Anne had not slept. She was standing in front of the office window looking at the city below when Andrew found her the next morning. The morning sun illuminated her face, but there was something in her eyes that the light could not reach. An old shadow. You got here early, Andrew said from the door. Anne did not turn around. I did not leave. You spent the night here? I could not sleep. I thought it was better to stay. Andrew entered the room and closed the door behind him. The meeting with the investors is in 2 hours. Is everything ready? It is. Then why do you look like you are carrying the world on your shoulders? Anne finally turned around. There was something different on her face, a vulnerability Andrew had never seen before. Can I tell you something? She asked quietly. You can tell me anything. Anne took a deep breath. My father, she began, was a businessman, respected, admired, the type of person who walked into a room and everyone stopped to listen. Andrew approached slowly. What happened to him? He had a partner, a man he considered a friend. Anne let out a bitter laugh. They worked together for 15 years, built a company from scratch. My father trusted him more than anyone in the world. She paused. And that partner pulled a scheme, embezzled millions, forged documents, and when everything came to light, her voice faltered. He put the blame on my father. Andrew fell silent. My father was accused of fraud, of crimes he never committed. Anne swallowed hard. He went to prison swearing his innocence, and inside, a sudden illness. He never came home again. The silence that followed was heavy. Anne, Andrew said quietly, after that, nobody wanted to hire me. She shrugged, as if she were talking about the weather. I was the criminal's daughter. It did not matter that I had graduated with honors. It did not matter that I had worked at technology companies for years. Every time someone searched my name, they found his name, and the door closed. That is why you became a cleaning lady. It was the only door that did not close in my face. Anne looked at her own hands. Nobody cares about the last name of the person who cleans the floor. Andrew took another step. And your mother? She lives with me. I have been taking care of her since my father left. Anne smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes. She is the reason I am still standing. Andrew stood still for a long moment. Then he did something Anne did not expect. He took her hand. Anne, he said, his voice firm, you are not anyone's daughter. She raised her eyes. You are the most extraordinary person I have ever met. He squeezed her hand. And what they did to your father, what they did to you, that does not define who you are. Anne felt her eyes burn. You barely know me. I know you enough. How? Because I saw you save a company that was not yours. I saw you work until you nearly collapsed for people who did not even know your name. I saw you refuse credit when you could have demanded recognition. He held her gaze. That tells me everything I need to know. Anne could not respond. For the first time in a long time, she had no words. Now, Andrew said, slowly releasing her hand, let us end this. Together. Anne nodded. Together. 2 hours later, the conference room was packed. Investors in suits occupied every chair. There were representatives from investment funds, business partners, and executives from allied companies. It was the type of meeting where millions of dollars were decided between one cup of coffee and another. Raymond Cross was seated in the first row, smiling as always. Andrew opened the meeting with a speech about the company's future. Numbers, projections, the type of thing that made investors smile and nod. Anne was standing in the corner of the room, near the system control panel. Waiting. And now, Andrew said, I would like to present our new digital security strategy. He gestured to the IT technician. The technician clicked the remote control, and all the screens in the room went black. What is happening? An investor asked. Technical problems, another murmured. Raymond frowned but kept his smile. Marcus Brennan, who was at the back of the room, looked at Anne. She nodded discreetly. It was time. Gentlemen, Anne said, walking to the main panel, I apologize for the technical failure. Allow me to fix this. She typed some commands on the keyboard. The screens came back on, but instead of Andrew's presentation, something different appeared. Lines of code, dates, times, and a name that repeated on every line. Raymond Cross. Raymond's smile froze. What is this? He asked, his voice still calm. This, Anne said, is the truth. She clicked another command. A chart appeared on the screen. Over the past 6 months, Novak Technologies suffered 3 coordinated cyber attacks. Anne pointed to the data. These attacks were programmed to happen at specific times that coincided perfectly with Mr. Raymond Cross's external meetings. Murmurs went through the room. Raymond stood up. This is absurd. Coincidence is not proof. You are right, Anne said. Coincidence is not proof. She clicked one more command. A new screen appeared. But this is... The malicious code was exposed. Every line, every command, every detail, and at the top, the digital signature. Access credentials, R. Cross, executive level. This code was created using Mr. Cross's personal credentials, Anne explained. It was planted in the system 6 months ago, and it was programmed to divert funds from the company in 3 stages. Raymond turned pale. This is a setup. Someone stole my credentials. Anne tilted her head. Are you sure? She turned to the panel. System, please confirm the origin of the malicious code identified as Shadow Protocol. The metallic voice of the computer filled the room. Code created on private terminal. Location, Raymond Cross's office, 32nd floor. Creation date, March 14th. Time, 11:42 at night. Credentials used, Raymond Cross, executive level. Biometric authentication confirmed. The silence that followed was absolute. Biometric authentication, Anne repeated. Fingerprint. Facial recognition. She looked at Raymond. Nobody stole your credentials, Mr. Cross. You used them personally. Raymond looked around the room. All eyes were fixed on him. I can explain, he said, his voice trembling. Can you? Andrew stood up. Then explain, Raymond. Explain why you tried to destroy the company my father built. Here. Explain why you wanted to steal $27 million. Explain why you spent 20 years smiling at me while planning to stab me in the back. Raymond opened his mouth, closed it. No words came out. It was because of the acquisition, was it not? Andrew continued. When my father bought 60% of your company, you never got over it. Raymond finally found his voice. Your father took everything from me, he spat. That company was mine. I built it from scratch, and he showed up with his money and took control as if it were nothing. My father saved your company from bankruptcy. He stole it from me. He offered you a partnership. He turned me into an employee in my own creation. The silence returned. Raymond was breathing heavily, his face red with rage. 20 years, he said quietly. 20 years I waited, planned, smiled, and when I was finally ready to have my revenge, he looked at Anne with hatred. A cleaning lady ruined everything. Anne held his gaze. Actually, she said calmly, I prefer the term security consultant. One of the investors let out a nervous laugh. Andrew gestured to the security guards at the door. Take Mr. Cross out. The police have already been notified. Raymond was escorted out of the room under everyone's gaze. When the door closed, the silence lasted only a second. Then the investors began to applaud. Anne stood still, not knowing how to react. Andrew walked over to her. You did it, he said quietly. We did it? He smiled. We did it. And there, in the middle of that room full of people, with applause echoing around them, Anne realized something. For the first time in years, she was no longer anyone's daughter. She was simply Anne, and that was more than enough. The Novak Technologies building was empty. Dark hallways, deserted offices. The only sound was the soft squeak of cloth against glass as Anne erased her own notes. She had spent days writing on those walls. Formulas, connections, patterns. Her mind transformed into pink ink on transparent surface, and now she was erasing everything. It felt like the end of something. What are you doing? Anne turned around. Marcus Brennan was standing at the door with Trevor and 3 other members of the IT team behind him. Cleaning, Anne said. The case is over. I do not need these notes anymore. But Trevor took a step forward. These notes are like art. Crazy genius art in a good way. Thank you, Trevor. I think. Marcus entered the room, hands in his pockets. Actually, we came here for another reason. Anne raised an eyebrow. If it is to ask for help with some code, I technically do not work here anymore. It is not that. Marcus looked at the others. We came to apologize, Anne blinked. Apologize? Yes. Trevor scratched the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable. For thinking you were a collective dream caused by corporate stress. And for doubting you in the meeting, another technician added. And for not helping more, Marcus said. You appeared out of nowhere, saved the company, and we just stood there watching like it was a movie. Anne did not know what to say. You do not have to. Yes, we do, Marcus interrupted. You did in 1 week what we could not do in months, and you did it while being treated like... He hesitated. Like a cleaning lady? Anne completed. I was going to say being underestimated, but yes, that too. Trevor took a step forward. I made something for you. He took something out of his pocket. It was a badge. Anne took it and looked. The badge said, Anne, resident genius, not a cleaning lady, but could be if she wanted. Anne let out a laugh. Trevor, this is terrible? I know, I made it myself in paint. I was going to say perfect. Trevor broke into a huge smile. Really? Really? Anne put the badge in her pocket. Thank you. Truly. Marcus extended his hand. It was an honor working with you, Anne, even if it was for a short time. Anne shook his hand. The honor was mine. One by one, the IT team members said goodbye. Trevor was the last, and before leaving, he turned at the door. Anne? Yes? If you ever need someone to spill spaghetti on an annoying executive, call me. I have experience. Anne laughed. You got it, Trevor. He left, and Anne was alone again. She turned to the glass wall, the cloth still in her hand. She looked at the notes that still remained, incomplete formulas, half-erased connections, fragments of thoughts that had saved a company. She raised the cloth to continue erasing. Do not erase it. Anne froze. Andrew was standing at the door. She had not heard him arrive. How long have you been there? She asked. Long enough to see Trevor give you a badge made in paint. It was a nice gesture. It was a terrible gesture. But nice. Andrew entered the room slowly. Why are you erasing this? Because the case is over. So what? So these notes are not useful for anything anymore. Andrew walked up to her, stopped beside her, looked at the wall. You are wrong, he said quietly. About what? About this not being useful for anything. He extended his hand and held the cloth Anne was still holding. His fingers touched hers. Neither of them moved. Do not erase it, Andrew repeated. This is you. Anne felt her heart race. It is just a bunch of scribbles. No, it is not. He looked at her. It is the way you think, the way you see the world, the way you connect things nobody else can see. Andrew. It was the first time she used his name. They both realized it at the same time. I have never met anyone like you, Andrew said, his voice low. I spent my whole life surrounded by people who wanted to impress, who wanted something from me, who smiled for the wrong reasons. Like Raymond, like many people, he let go of the cloth but did not move his hand away. And then you appeared, barefoot, with a pink pen, saving my company in the middle of the night. Anne let out a nervous laugh. When you say it like that, it sounds like a bad movie. Maybe it is a bad movie, but it is my favorite bad movie. They were close, too close to be casual, too far to be obvious. The silence stretched on. Anne looked at the notes on the wall, at the formulas, at the fragments of thought. You changed the way I see the world, Andrew said. Anne turned to face him. You also changed something in me, she said quietly. What? I had forgotten what it was like to truly be seen. She swallowed hard. For so long I was invisible. The criminal's daughter, the cleaning lady, the person nobody notices. And then you. She did not finish. She did not need to. Andrew took a step forward. The distance between them decreased. Anne could feel his warmth, his scent, his breath. For a second, it seemed like something was going to happen. The whole world reduced to that space between them. Then Anne took a step back. Not yet, she said quietly. Andrew stopped. Anne, I need. She took a deep breath. I need to be sure this is real, that it is not gratitude or adrenaline or the heat of the moment. Do you think that is what it is? I do not know. She met his gaze. And I need to know. Before taking that step, Andrew was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay? Yes, he took a step back, respecting her space. I said I would wait as long as it takes, and I meant it. Anne felt her eyes burn. Most men would not wait. I am not most men. I know. She smiled. That's why I need to be sure. They stood side by side looking at the wall. The silence was comfortable, light. Then Andrew said, Anne, I need your resume. She turned to him, confused. My resume? You already have it. It is in HR. No, that is the cleaning lady resume. So what? I am going back to the cleaning crew. The case is over. Andrew crossed his arms. Do you really think I'm going to let you go back to cleaning bathrooms after all this? It is my job. It was your job. He stared at her. I want the real resume, the one you hid. Anne's eyes widened. How do you know I hid something? Because you are too smart not to have a real professional past. Andrew smiled. And because nobody learns to do what you do by cleaning floors. Anne was silent for a moment. Apparently you know me well. I am learning. She let out a laugh. Okay, I will send it tomorrow. Great, because I have an opening for Director of Digital Security that needs to be filled. Anne blinked. Director? Any problem? None. It is just that, last week I was cleaning bathrooms. And last week I did not know I had a genius hidden on the night shift. Andrew shrugged. Things change. Anne looked at him for a long moment. You are serious. I am always serious. That is not true. You made at least 3 jokes since you entered this room. Okay, I'm almost always serious. He smiled. But about this, I am completely serious. Anne looked at the glass wall, at the notes, at everything she had built there. Director of Digital Security, she repeated quietly. With your own office, competitive salary, and permission to write on the glass walls whenever you want. Is that last part negotiable? That last part is mandatory. Anne smiled. It was the kind of smile that lit up her entire face. Then I accept. You do not even know the salary yet. It does not matter. Why not? Anne looked at him. Because for the first time in a long time, someone is offering me a chance to be who I really am. She took a deep breath. That is worth more than any salary. Andrew held her gaze. You deserve this, Anne. And much more. 3 months later, Novak Technologies had never been better. The investors were happy, the employees were motivated, and for the first time in years, nobody was afraid to look at the financial reports. Raymond Cross was facing 7 different lawsuits. His lawyer had quit twice, and the newspapers had already stopped talking about him, which for a man who loved the spotlight was probably the worst punishment of all. But that is not the important part of the story. The important part was happening on the 28th floor, in a glass office that now had a sign on the door. The sign said, Anne, Director of Digital Security. And right below, someone had stuck a sticker that said, Resident Genius, not a cleaning lady, but could be if she wanted. Trevor swore it was not him. Nobody believed him. That night, Anne was alone in the office. It was late. The building was empty, and she was doing what she always did when she needed to think, writing on the glass walls. Barefoot. Her shoes were thrown in a corner of the room, forgotten. Anne walked back and forth on the cold floor, the pink pen gliding over the transparent surface, leaving trails of formulas and connections. Some things never change. It was no longer about cyber attacks or malicious code. Now it was new projects, ideas, possibilities. But in the corner of the wall, an old phrase still remained. Anne had never erased it. Connections that save people. She was looking at that phrase when she heard the door open. I knew I would find you here. Anne turned around. Andrew was standing at the door, hands in his pockets, a smile on his face. What are you doing here? She asked. It is almost 3 a.m. I could ask you the same question. I work here. So do I. You are the owner. That does not count. Andrew entered the room, looking around at the new notes on the walls. Then his gaze went down to her feet. Bare. He smiled. Some things really do not change. Anne looked at her own feet and shrugged. I think better this way. I know. Andrew walked to the shoes thrown in the corner and looked at them. You know, the first night I found you, you were also barefoot. I remember thinking you were the strangest person I had ever seen. Thank you. It was a compliment. It did not sound like one. I was not good with compliments back then. And you are now? I am getting better. Anne laughed. Andrew continued walking around the room, observing the formulas, the charts, the connections. Then he stopped in front of the corner Anne had never erased. This phrase, he said, pointing. You wrote it the first night? Anne nodded. Connections that save people, Andrew read aloud. I remember seeing this when I walked into the room and found you barefoot, talking to the computer as if it were a friend. It is a friend. Sometimes. Sometimes. When it does not crash in the middle of an important report. Andrew laughed. Then he became serious. Anne, he said, turning to face her. I need to tell you something. If it is about the department budget, I already sent the report. It is not about the budget. If it is about tomorrow's meeting, I already prepared the presentation. It is not about the meeting. If it is about Trevor putting stickers on the executive bathroom door. Anne, she stopped. Andrew took a step forward. I did not come here to talk about work. The air in the room changed. Anne felt her heart race. Then why did you come? Andrew was silent for a moment, as if choosing the right words. You saved my company, he said finally. But that is not all. You changed everything. Andrew, let me finish. He took a deep breath. Before you appeared, I thought I knew how the world worked. I thought I knew the people around me, that I could trust the smiles and the handshakes. He shook his head. I was wrong. You could not have known about Raymond. No, but I could have paid more attention. Could have looked beyond appearances. He met her gaze. You taught me that. You taught me to look at the corners, at the margins, at the places where nobody pays attention. Anne said nothing. And you taught me something else, Andrew continued. You taught me that the most extraordinary people are sometimes hidden in the most unlikely places, that geniuses do not need spotlights, that strength does not need noise. He took another step. Now they were close. Too close to be casual. These last 3 months, he said quietly, have been the best of my life. And it was not because of the profits or the investors or the company's success. It was because every morning, when I arrived at the office, I knew I was going to see you. Anne felt her eyes burn. Andrew, I waited, he interrupted. You asked for time, and I waited. You asked to be sure, and I gave you space. But now I need to know. Know what? Andrew held her hand. If you want to try. For real. Not as boss and employee. Not as coworkers. He squeezed her hand. As us. You and me. Together. Anne looked at him, at his eyes that looked at her as if she were the most important thing in the world. At his hand holding hers, firm but gentle. At the man who had waited, who had respected her, who had proven day after day that he was different from all the others. Are you asking me to be your girlfriend? She asked, a smile appearing on her lips. I am. Andrew smiled back. In a very awkward way, apparently. It was not awkward. No, maybe a little. Thank you for the honesty. You are welcome. They stood looking at each other for a moment. So? Andrew asked. What is the answer? Anne pretended to think. Let me see. The CEO of the company is asking me to be his girlfriend at 3 in the morning in a glass room covered with formulas written with a pink pen. And I am barefoot. When you say it like that, it sounds strange. It is a little strange. Strange good or strange bad? Anne smiled. Strange perfect. And then she did something she had wanted to do for a long time. She stood on the tips of her bare toes and kissed Andrew Novak. The kiss was soft at first, gentle, like a question. Then Andrew put his hand on her waist and pulled her closer, and the kiss became an answer. A promise. A beginning. When they finally separated, Anne was laughing. What is it? Andrew asked, his forehead resting against hers. Nothing. It is just that. She looked at the clock on the wall. It is 3:20 in the morning. So what? So that was exactly the time I met you. She smiled, her eyes shining. It seems like 3 in the morning likes me. Andrew laughed. It seems so. He kissed her again. Outside, the city slept, indifferent to what was happening in that glass room on the 28th floor. But inside that office, among formulas and connections, 2 people who had met at the most unlikely moment possible finally stopped waiting. Anne looked at the wall, at the phrase she had never erased. Connections that save people. She had written that thinking about codes and systems. But now she understood it meant much more. Some connections save companies. Others save data. But the best ones, the ones that really matter, save people. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they happen at 3 in the morning when you least expect it. Andrew held her hand, ready to go home. Anne looked at him, at the room, at everything she had built there. Almost, she said. I just need to do one thing first. She took the pink pen from her pocket and walked to the wall. Below connections that save people, she wrote a new phrase. Andrew approached to read. And sometimes they save us too. He smiled. I like it. Me too. Anne put the pen in her pocket, put on her shoes, and took Andrew's hand. Before leaving, she looked one last time at the glass room, at the formulas, at the connections, at everything that had started there. Then she turned off the light and closed the door. On the other side, the future was waiting, and for the first time in a long time, Anne was not afraid of it. Sometimes, the most extraordinary people are hidden in the places where nobody looks. Never underestimate someone because of their quirks. They might be exactly who is going to change your life. If you felt that too, leave in the comments the rating you would give this story. And if you believe everyone needs to learn to look beyond appearances, subscribe, because the best connections happen when you least expect them. Until the next story from Soulful Love Tales.